13th juz, and then, like usual, reading up till the half mark, which is ayah 17 of Surah Ra'd. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما أبرئ نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي إن ربي غفور رحيم. وقال الملك ائتوني به أستخلصه لنفسي فلما كلمه قال إنك اليوم لدينا مكين أمين. قال اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليم. وكذلك مكنا ليوسف في الأرض يتبوأ منها حيث يشاء نصيب برحمتنا من نشاء ولا نضيع أجر المحسنين. ولأجر الآخرة خير للذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون. وجاء إخوة يوسف فدخلوا عليه فعرفهم وهم له منكرون. ولما جهزهم بجهازهم قال ائتوني بأخ لكم من أبيكم ألا ترون أني أوفي الكيل وأنا خير المنزلين. فإن لم تأتوني به فلا كيل لكم عندي ولا تقربون. قالوا سنراود عنه أباه وإنا لفاعلون. وقال لفتيانه اجعلوا بضاعتهم في رحالهم لعلهم يعرفونها إذا انقلبوا إلى أهلهم لعلهم يرجعون. فلما رجعوا إلى أبيهم قالوا يا أبانا منع منا الكيل فأرسل معنا أخانا نكتل وإنا له لحافظون. قال هل آمنكم عليه إلا كما أمنتكم على أخيه من قبل فالله خير حافظا وهو أرحم الراحمين. ولما فتحوا متاعهم وجدوا بضاعتهم ردت إليهم قالوا يا أبانا ما نبغي هذه بضاعتنا ردت إلينا ونمير أهلنا ونحفظ أخانا ونزداد كيل بعير ذلك كيل يسير. قال لن أرسله معكم حتى تؤتون موثقا من الله لتؤتنني به إلا أن يحاط بكم. فلما آتوه موثقهم قال الله على ما نقول وكيل. وقال يا بني لا تدخلوا من باب واحد وادخلوا من أبواب متفرقة وما أغني عنكم من الله من شيء إن الحكم إلا لله عليه توكلت وعليه فليتوكل المتوكلون. ولما دخلوا من حيث أمرهم أبوهم ما كان يغني عنهم من الله من شيء إلا حاجة في نفس يعقوب قضاها وإنه لذو علم لما علمناه ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. ولما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه أخاه قال إني أنا أخوك فلا تبتئس بما كانوا يعملون فلما جهزهم بجهازهم جعل السقاية في رحل أخيه ثم أذن مؤذن أيتها العير إنكم لسارقون قالوا وأقبلوا عليهم ماذا تفقدون قالوا نفقد سواع الملك ولمن جاء به حمل بعير وأنا به سعيد قالوا تالله لقد علمتم ما جئنا لنفسد في الأرض وما كنا سارقين قالوا فما جزاؤه إن كنتم كاذبين قالوا جزاؤه من وجد في رحله فهو جزاؤه كذلك نجزي الظالمين فبدأ بأوعيتهم قبل وعاء أخيه ثم استخرجها من وعاء أخيه كذلك كدنا ليوسف ما كان ليأخذ أخاه في دين الملك إلا أن يشاء الله نرفع درجات من نشاء وفوق كل ذي علم عليم قالوا إن يسرق فقد سرق أخ له من قبل فأسرها يوسف في نفسه ولم يبدها لهم قال أنتم شر مكانا والله أعلم بما تصفون قالوا يا أيها العزيز إن له أبا شيخا كبيرا فخذ أحدنا مكانه إنا نراك من المحسنين قال معاذ الله أن نأخذ إلا من وجدنا متاعنا عنده إنا إذا لظالمون فلما استيئسوا منه خلصوا نجيا قال كبيرهم ألم تعلموا أن أباكم وقد أخذ عليكم موثقا من الله ومن قبل ما فرطتم في يوسف فلن أبرح الأرض حتى يأذن لي أبي أو يحكم الله لي وهو خير الحاكمين ارجعوا إلى أبيكم فقولوا يا أبانا إن ابنك سرق وما شهدنا إلا بما علمنا وما كنا للغيب حافظين واسأل القرية التي كنا فيها والعير التي أقبلنا فيها وإنا لصادقون قال بل سولت لكم أنفسكم أمرا فصبر جميل عسى الله أن يأتيني بهم جميعا إنه هو العليم الحكيم وتولى عنهم وقال يا أسفا على يوسف وابيضت عيناه من الحزن فهو كظيم قالوا تالله تفتأ تذكر يوسف حتى تكون حرة أو تكون من الهالكين قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون يا بني اذهبوا فتحسسوا من يوسف وأخيه ولا تيأسوا من روح الله إنه لا ييأس من روح الله إلا القوم الكافرون فلما دخلوا عليه قالوا يا أيها العزيز مسنا وأهلنا الضر وجئنا ببضاعة مزجاة فأوف لنا الكيل وتصدق علينا إن الله يجزي المتصدقين قال هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون قالوا وإنك لأنت يوسف قال أنا يوسف وهذا أخي قد من الله علينا إنه من يتقي ويصبر فإن الله لا يضيع أجر المحسنين قالوا تالله لقد آثرك الله علينا وإن كنا لخاطئين قال لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين اذهبوا بقميصي هذا فألقوه على وجه أبي يأت بصيرا وأتوني بأهلكم أجمعين ولما فصلت العير قال أبوهم إني لاجد ريح يوسف لولا أن تفندون قالوا تالله إنك لفي ضلالك القديم فلما أن جاء البشير ألقاه على وجهه فارتد بصيرا قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون قالوا يا أبانا استغفر لنا ذنوبنا إنا كنا خاطئين قال سوف أستغفر لكم ربي إنه هو الغفور الرحيم فلما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه أبويه وقال ادخلوا مصر إن شاء الله آمنين ورفع أبويه على العرش وخروا له سجدا وقال يا أبت هذا تأويل رؤياي من قبل قد جعلها ربي حقا وقد أحسن بي إذ أخرجني من السجن وجاء بكم من البدو من بعد أن نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي إن ربي لطيف لما يشاء إنه هو العليم الحكيم رب قد آتيتني من الملك وعلمتني من تأويل الأحاديث فاطر السماوات والأرض أنت ولي في الدنيا والآخرة توفني مسلما وألحقني بالصالحين ذلك من أنباء الغيب نوحيه إليك وما كنت لديهم إذ أجمعوا أمرهم وهم يمكرون وما أكثر الناس ولو حرصت بمؤمنين وما تسألهم عليه من أجر إن هو إلا ذكر للعالمين وكأين من آية في السماوات والأرض يمرون عليها وهم عنها معرضون وما يؤمن أكثرهم بالله إلا وهم مشركون أفأمنوا أن تأتيهم غاشية من عذاب الله أو تأتيهم الساعة بغتة وهم لا يشعرون قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين وما أرسلنا من قبلك إلا رجالا نوحي إليهم من أهل القرى أفلم يسيروا في الأرض فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبلهم ولدار الآخرة خير للذين اتقوا أفلا تعقلون حتى إذا استيأس الرسل وظنوا أنهم قد كذبوا جاءهم نصرنا فنجي من نشاء ولا يرد بأسنا عن القوم المجرمين لقد كان في قصصهم عبرة لأولي الألباب ما كان حديثا يفترى ولكن تصديق الذي بين يديه وتفصيل كل شيء وهدى ورحمة لقوم يؤمنون بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم را. تلك آيات الكتاب والذي أنزل إليك من ربك الحق ولكن أكثر الناس لا يؤمنون. الله الذي رفع السماوات بغير عمد ترونها ثم استوى على العرش وسخر الشمس والقمر كل يجري لأجل مسمى يدبر الأمر يفصل الآيات لعلكم بلقاء ربكم توقنون. وهو الذي مد الأرض وجعل فيها رواسي وأنهارا ومن كل الثمرات جعل فيها زوجين اثنين يغشي الليل النهار إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. وفي الأرض قطع متجاورات وجنات من أعناب وزرع ونخيل سنوان وغير سنوان يسقى بماء واحد ونفضل بعضها على بعض في الأكل إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يعقلون. وإن تعجب فعجب قولهم إذا كنا ترابا أئنا لفي خلق جديد أولئك الذين كفروا بربهم وأولئك الأغلال في أعناقهم وأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. ويستعجلونك بالسيئة قبل الحسنة وقد خلت من قبلهم المثلات وإن ربك لذو مغفرة للناس على ظلمهم وإن ربك لشديد العقاب. ويقول الذين كفروا لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه إنما أنت منذر ولكل قوم هاد. الله يعلم ما تحمل كل أنثى وما تغيض الأرحام وما تزداد وكل شيء عنده بمقدار. عالم الغيب والشهادة الكبير المتعال. سواء منكم من أسر القول ومن جهر به ومن هو مستخف بالليل وسارب بالنهار له معقبات من بين يديه ومن خلفه يحفظونه من أمر الله إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم وإذا أراد الله بقوم سوءا فلا مرد له وما لهم من دونه من وال. هو الذي يريكم البرق خوفا وطمعا وينشئ السحاب الثقال ويسبح الرعد بحمده والملائكة من خيفته ويرسل الصواعق فيصيب بها من يشاء وهم يجادلون في الله وهو شديد المحال. له دعوة الحق والذين يدعون من دونه لا يستجيبون لهم بشيء إلا كباسط كفيه إلى الماء ليبلغ فاه وما هو ببالغه وما دعاء الكافرين إلا في ضلال. ولله يسجد من في السماوات والأرض طوعا وكرها وظلالهم بالغدو والآصال قل من رب السماوات والأرض قل الله قل أفاتخذتم من دونه أولياء لا يملكون لأنفسهم نفعا ولا ضرا قل هل يستوي الأعمى والبصير أم هل تستوي الظلمات والنور أم جعلوا لله شركاء خلقوا كخلقه فتشابه الخلق عليهم قل الله خالق كل شيء وهو الواحد القهار أنزل من السماء ماء فسالت أودية بقدرها فاحتمل السيل زبدا رابيا ومما يوقدون عليه في النار ابتغاء حلية أو متاع زبد مثله كذلك يضرب الله الحق والباطل فأما الزبد فيذهب جفاء وأما ما ينفع الناس فيمكث في الأرض كذلك يضرب الله الأمثال صدق الله العظيم. The ayahs that we just recited did have a sajda in it, so after this, inshallah, please do remember to fulfill that. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillahi walhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Amma ba'd. So we just finished the first half of the 13th juz, and in the 13th, as you know, we began yesterday, is Surah Yusuf, and we just began Surah Ra'd, which will take you to the end of the juz. And this juz in particular is a lot of people's favorites, and it's a surah that it's a juz in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Yusuf, he says, نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ, right? That we've revealed to you the best of stories. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala characterizes the stories that he narrates to us throughout the Quran, but this is the surah in which he says, أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ, right? And that tells us that there's something particularly profound that every single person, regardless of their background, what intention they have coming into and reading the Quran, what demographic they may be a part of, what their life situation may contain. This is the best of stories in which there are lessons for every single person, regardless of whatever their orientation may be, can benefit from. And we know that because in Surah Yusuf, there are a lot of wisdoms, as there are with a lot of the other stories with the Anbiya. But in Surah Yusuf, the story begins with Yusuf alayhi salam, him having a dream. And in that dream that most of us know, and some of the narrations and also the stories that we grow up learning from, is he sees the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. And when he tells this to his father, right, when he tells this to Yaqub alayhi salam, the first thing that comes to Yaqub alayhi salam's mind is concern and worry, because he knows that this isn't any ordinary dream. This isn't a dream that you can dismiss. And he knows what the hearts of his other sons contain. And that his other brothers, that if they were told about this dream, that they know that this is some level of preference being given to Yusuf alayhi salam, either by their father or by even God, right? And so Yaqub alayhi salam, he tells Yusuf alayhi salam not to tell this dream to his brothers. Because if you tell it to your brothers, they may be jealous, and I'm worried or concerned for what may happen to you. So he knew right there's wisdom in his father knowing that the state of his own family, like right then. And so there's a few things even in here that we learn from, right? We know Yaqub alayhi salam is a prophet. We know that Yusuf alayhi salam is about to become a prophet, and Yaqub alayhi salam has hints of this. But despite Yaqub alayhi salam being a prophet, it could have been very easy for him to either manipulate the situation in terms of dismissing the dream out in some sort of jealousy, right? That why is it that my son is getting a dream like this, right? Why is it that I didn't get a dream like this? We know that he could have, there's a lot of other things that he could have done, but his primary concern before anything was protect yourself, right? This is something that is special, that is being gifted to you, and for you to be able to realize it, that I also need to be taking good care of you. And we know that the story, when the story continues, that Yusuf alayhi salam, that when his brothers do get jealous of him, right, that he is the favorite of their father, and that they throw him into the well, and that his brothers were jealous of something that was good, right? Imagine that something this big of a blessing comes into your family. That doesn't always mean that that everybody sees it as a blessing. And a lot of us can maybe relate to this at some level in our own families or in our own social circles, right? When you're gifted something good, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses something and decrees something for you that He does not give to somebody else, that's an opportunity to either recognize that, for other people to either recognize that blessing and pray that you are increased in it, so that the angels also make dua that they are also gifted that. Or the unfortunate reality of most people is that you start to question, why didn't I get that, right? And this is what the brothers did. And so we won't go too much into the story, but most of us know the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. But one of the main lessons that we learn from his story is that despite all of these situations, of all of the calamities and difficulties that he was put into, the main lesson that lines, thematically this entire story is what the Prophet ﷺ told us in a hadith, that whatever is intended to hit you will never miss you, and whatever is intended to miss you will never hit you. And Yusuf alayhi salam is a prime example of that. That at the end of the day, whatever was decreed for him in terms of prophethood, in terms of his rizq, in terms of him being reunited with his family, all of these things, eventually, that when you trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His plan, everything from the beginning, right? The story of his brothers first taking him, right? Then him being thrown into the well, then him being separated from his father, right? When the caravan came to take him. Then on top of that, he begins to serve as a slave and also as a servant. And then after that, he is tempted by the wife of the Aziz. Then he's thrown into jail. Right? All of these things, you can't imagine. This isn't even something that happened in the span of one bad year of his life. This is something that happened throughout the course of multiple years. So imagine living a life up to, even in our own situations, whether it's your 20s or your 30s or your 40s or your 50s, only knowing that difficulty, but still having the conviction and still having the trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Hakim and Alim, right? That He is the most wise, that He is the all-knowing, and then at the end of the day, every single thing that is being decreed is either for our own benefit or that there is a greater plan in it. And so that when you hold on to that rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that no matter what your situation is, it's very easy, especially in a situation like that. Take one of those stories, for example, of being thrown into prison, to lose hope right then and there. But to hold steadfast onto it is a guarantee. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the 28th juz 2 and throughout multiple other parts in the Quran, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, that the people who do have taqwa and the people that do have a belief and hold on to that rope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them, that He will provide for them a way out of every single difficulty. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. And then this is another juz, but thematically it's the same. وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. That this is one of the most beautiful ayat. This is one of my favorite ayat in the Quran, that it doesn't matter what you thought you were going to do. It doesn't matter, what you thought was yours, what you were praying for even, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears and knows all of this. Or how you thought your life was going to unfold. Yusuf alayhi salam did not think that any one of these things was going to happen at any certain point in time. Right? But وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will provide from you, for you, from sources that you had not even imagined. Right? Realities that you never even thought could have been realities. Pathways and doors to open that you never thought were even possibilities to open. And what happens that we learn in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam? Right, that after all of these difficulty after difficulty after difficulty, being thrown into jail, he also has opportunities to leave the jail, which we'll talk about briefly. But ultimately, he becomes the king. Right, he also becomes the minister of finance. So on top of being the king of Egypt, the minister of finance, that every single person, when they either come in or leave the kingdom, that he is responsible for the livelihood and also just the finances of that entire kingdom. And this is a very different situation. This is the same man who was a servant in that same kingdom. Right? So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends something for you, it doesn't matter who is going to try to stop you from having it. It could have been the king himself, but it will come to you. And I can attest to this. Lots of people can attest to this, right? That you can shut the doors, but if something is intended for you, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will literally drag it literally drag it to your doorstep. And so we learned that particularly in Yusuf alayhi salam's story. One other big lesson, this is something that I reflect on a lot too. And this is more for people who do have some level of belief or conviction that whatever happens is always for the best. Even if it's difficult to see in the moment, you will always guaranteed 110% look back at your life and the things that happen and see, whether you see the hikmah and the wisdom in it or not, you will know that it was there, right? That if things had unfolded another way, that you wouldn't be where you are today. Right? Imam Ghazali, he tells us that if we had perfect knowledge of our situation, if we knew what happened in the past, what were to happen in the future, what were to happen with all the decisions that we did not make, if we knew all the other factors that were happening in the present, that we wouldn't change a single decision that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already made for us because it was already the perfect decision. And so one of the other things that we learned from the story is when you do have that faith that things happen for the best, sometimes you hope for it in longing. So you might go through, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever tests us with a difficulty, you might go through a difficulty, and once it's passed, once you feel like you've overcome it, you have this breath of relief. And you think that was the difficulty. Now I know that I'm promised ease. Right? That was the difficulty. Now I know the only thing that can come next is ease, because that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised. Right? Inna ma'al usri yusra. That with difficulty comes ease. But the timing of that ease is not something that's up to us. Right? I've caught myself multiple times in this moment where it's like, finally, you get that break from that difficulty, and you think the good thing is going to come, but you're only hit with a more difficult problem. And Yusuf alayhi salam is an attestation to this, that after he was thrown into the well by his brothers, he could have thought that that's it. That's the most difficult thing that I just went through in my life. Right? Betrayal from my family, physical, emotional harm, all of that. But no, then he is separated from his father, the most beloved person to him in his life. Then he could have thought it ended there, and that at some point he would be reunited. But no, then he's taken from a caravan and then he's sold into slavery. And then it could have ended there, but then he's thrown into jail. But the point being is that he stuck through all of it, and he held high hopes and a high opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout every single one of those things until the ease came, and it will come. It's a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's one of the bigger lessons that we can take away from this story. Some of the other things that are covered here, and we have a few minutes left, inshallah. So we just talked about, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that ibratul lakum, that this is a story that has wisdom in it. And this is one of the stories in which you actually see a lot of use. So the Quran appeals to a lot of our different faculties, right? Some of the ulama say that this is why you have so many different verses. Some of the verses that say there's a reward, right? If you do a certain thing, if you strive in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you get X amount of reward for doing that. You're promised Jannah. You're promised certain amount of deeds. That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appealing to people. Anybody who studies psychology knows this, right? People are motivated by different factors. So people who are motivated by reward, that's who that appeals to. Right? They're not as concerned, even though they maybe should be. The appeals of Jahannam, or like that fear of Jahannam, isn't what is tangible to them. It's hard for them to relate to, but rather the seeking of Jannah is what is tangible to them, right? That's what they want. And so one of the faculties he appeals to is um, people who are motivated by reward. Another is fear that we talked about. All the ayat about punishment and adab, right? Those are in the Quran for people that aren't motivated by reward. They don't really care about extra that they can get in their life, but rather they fear punishment, loss aversion. Right? There are lots of studies that people do in terms of, if you give somebody, I can't recall the exact studies, but if you were to give somebody the choice between losing $100 or not gain the chance at gaining $100, if that makes sense, right? Losing $100, okay, no, let me rephrase that. You get the chance at gaining potentially $1,000, right? Or the chance at losing $100. People who are loss averse will say, I'd rather be where I'm at and not take any chance, right? I don't want to lose the 100. It's okay if I give up the 1,000, right? This is an example of people who are motivated by a fear of losing something. Then in Surah Yusuf, that what we particularly see, and this is, one of the ayat and also signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is this isn't just a book in which you have stories for people to believe blindly in. He actually gives us so many examples of logic, like he appeals to rationale. And one of the ayat that covers that is the story of the wife of the Aziz, right? And when she is trying to convict Yusuf alayhi salam, saying that, he came to me, right? He tempted me. And then there's the story of, the judging who is right in this situation. That if the marks are on the front, that means that, he was the perpetrator. But if the marks are on the back, that means he tried to run away. Right? He tried to escape, and somebody tried to grab him from the back. And these are such specific ayat that they could have been left out. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is including them very specifically to appeal to people who use their logic, right? Who have a difficult time believing purely based on just, and I wouldn't call it conjecture, that's not true at all, purely based on just testament, right? And so we find a lot of these examples in this surah particularly. The last thing to end with, this is an important point too. So why did Yusuf alayhi salam go through all of this? Right? This is a prophet, and we know that the prophets we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that he will test the believers, right? For you to be, for you to hold true to your claim of truth, for you to really say that you believe, right? For you to claim the shahada, say that there's no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you believe in the books, the angels, it's very easy to claim that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if you truly believe in that, do you think that we're not going to test you? And this is something that each of us know, and we don't necessarily ask for it, but we know that when the difficulties and the trials and the tests come, this is something that is virtually the only guarantee for a believer, right? That how true are you to your claim? And that we have to stay fast to those tests. We know that the prophets are amongst the most tested because these are the people who are carrying the actual message. And the ulama, they say that when a difficulty comes, there is tremendous wisdom in it, and there is a tremendous benefit in the difficulty, arguably sometimes more than even when you're faced with ease. And the reason for that is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests you with the difficulty, he only does so to bring you closer to him. And there's two ways they say that you can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first one is the obvious, in that you strive towards doing more, either ibadah, either more, reflection, knowing of him, essentially obedience, right? The more that you are steadfast on your salah, the more that you are steadfast on in a constant state of adhkar, in a constant state of remembrance, that's one way to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the wisdoms in difficulty is that most people, the vast majority of people, don't have the vigor, they don't have the motivation, they don't have the discipline to strive in that manner, right? I don't have, even personally speaking, right? A lot of us don't have, but personally, I don't have necessarily the discipline or the even like the engagement to be able to stand up all night and pray, right? It's very difficult to wake up for a lot of people. It's very difficult to wake up for qiyam alone to begin with. And so what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is He recognizes that you don't have that within you, but that you still want closeness to Him, or that closeness to Him is something that is good for you. And as a means of elevating your maqam, elevating your status, He forces you to do that through the difficulty, because through the difficulty and through patience, right? Inna Allaha ma'a sabirin, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the patient, that He loves the patient. That is one of the most tried and true ways to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So somebody that didn't have the discipline or didn't have the motivation to pray all night, right? They still obtain the same benefit, if not more, because of the difficulties that they were tested with, and because they stay patient with them. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes them amongst the people that He loves. And so we'll end with that, inshallah. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وادخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم اللهم أجرنا من النار اللهم أجرنا من النار اللهم أجرنا من النار اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم والله المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Inshallah, to announce the winners for the kids for today. Today's winner is Abdullah Bashir. And so, I see all these postings in our group where we announce the winner, where they're always super fascinated and impressed by all of the kids, and we're getting so many more kids. I think the email is getting flooded, or the inbox is getting flooded with emails from the kids trying to share a lot of the gems that they've learned and get a chance at that prize too. So inshallah, the question for today will be, what were all of the difficulties that Yusuf alayhi salam was tested with, and what were the lessons that he learned from it? Or what are the lessons that even we learned from it? So I'll end with that, inshallah. Jazakallah khair for everyone for joining. We'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.